Our next speaker today is going to be Adrian DiFrancesco, and he'll be leading us through an exercise about work and theology. Adrian is part of our family here at the Way Church. He grew up in Vancouver area and currently resides in downtown Vancouver. Adrian has been working at the Loblaw companies since May of 2007 and presently holds the position of National Online Grocery Specialist, responsible for the oversight of the e-commerce operations of 2 Loblaw grocery banners across Canada. He is currently pursuing a master's degree in leadership, theology, and society with a focus on workplace theology at Regent College. Adrian is passionate about sharing good food, reading, and enjoying the outdoors, in addition to his love for equipping and serving God's church. Thanks for being here, Adrian.
Thanks, Becca. Thank you. All right, this is the fun part now. You just heard some amazing teaching. We're going to transition to a bit of a workshop together, so I'm very excited. But to begin, I'm going to share some brief thoughts to help focus us in the last part of the day, food in our bellies, feeling comfortable, feeling good. And I want to help us imagine how we live out our work as worship and renewal. So I want to tell you about a 400-year-old Japanese art form called kintsugi. Kintsugi is literally translated as golden joinery. It is the art of repairing broken glasses, plates, and bowls by mending the areas of breakage with lacquer mixed with gold. So we have an image to show you what it looks like. Kintsugi is based on the idea that in embracing flaws and imperfections, you can create an even stronger, more beautiful piece of art. The breakage becomes part of the history of the object rather than something to disguise. Every break is unique, and instead of repairing the item like new, the technique actually highlights the scars as part of the design. There is no attempt to hide the damage, the repair is accentuated. And so the object is now considered more beautiful because it was broken. Kintsugi is an image of what Christ's renewal brings to fallen creation. The object is not only repaired, but it reflects the beauty of God in the process of repairing. It may be hard to see God's renewal in our work, especially when so much of it feels so broken. But just because we don't recognize it doesn't mean that God's not working to renew. So what would it look like to acknowledge the brokenness, not try to hide it or wish it away, but rather work on it to make it into something even more beautiful than it was if it was never broken in the first place? How can we mend the broken cracks of our work with gold? Consider this. At creation, God didn't make a perfect world. He purposefully created a work-in-progress world that needed to be worked in order to flourish. God didn't make an earth that just grows bread out of the ground. You have to plant the grain, and you have to wait for it to grow, and then you have to harvest the grain, and then you have to do the other things to get it to make bread. You know? I don't know all those steps. God didn't make wine just flow down right into our cups. We have to grow the grapes, harvest the grapes, press the grapes, put it in the barrels, let it age. The work it takes to make the wine. On the 6th day of creation, God formed and filled the earth. We read in Genesis chapter 1, verses 27 to 28, God passing this work onto us. It says, "So God created mankind in his image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. And God blessed them. And God said to them, be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, the heavens, and over every living thing that moves on the earth. In this, we carry on the work God modeled. We're made in his image, the image of the original worker. Chris talked about Jesus coming as a carpenter. Well, at creation, Yahweh came as a gardener. And so this idea of forming and filling, by being fruitful, we fill, we cultivate, we create. By subduing, we form, and we do that through ruling and stewarding what we've been given. Some people think that being fruitful and multiplying is just about making babies, but it's actually more than that. God gave us the vocation of carrying on this work of forming and filling the earth. So, even though God made us to delight in work of forming and filling, we experience hardship and trouble at times, and this is because of sin. Work exists in a world sustained by God, but disordered by sin. And yes, we do experience this brokenness in our work today, but there is a reality coming where God's kingdom will fully come on earth as it is in heaven, where work is an essential part of eternity in the new heavens and the new earth. Those of you who thought that after you die, your soul will just float up to heaven, lay back in the clouds, and relax for eternity, or singing in a never-ending worship service, well, some people might be relieved to know that that's not what's going to happen. And if you were hoping that that's what's going to happen, I'm sorry to disappoint you. But we will actually be experiencing work in its fullest form in new, embodied, eternal life. So, as we look at our own work contexts, we need to reframe, and that's what we've been doing today, reframing the narrative on work. So, I'm going to walk you through an exercise, but before I do, I want to give some examples of a project that I was able to do as part of my program that involved the 3 steps in your handout. Graham Fowler, who many of you know, is also one of my classmates and was able to do this project together. He was also part of the vision of this seminar that we're doing, so just want to acknowledge you for that, Graham. Okay, so I'm going to go through each of the steps, and I'm going to provide some examples. So step 1, as you'll see in your packet, understanding the brokenness. This involves identifying and focusing on the brokenness, what it involves, and why it exists. Consider things like worldviews, cultural norms, systems and structures that surround and influence it. Have people attempted to address this issue before? If so, what are the solutions they proposed, and why are they not working? Why are you personally interested in this issue, and what motivates that interest? What theological ideas, maybe even from the teaching that we heard today, could inform your understanding of brokenness, and what spiritual disciplines or insights can guide your discernment and your imagination? And then finally, as you think through this, consider which aspects of this brokenness do you have direct involvement or influence in. So to help illustrate, here's my example. In my work, I travel all across the country visiting grocery stores to meet with their online grocery teams. I was actually in Yellowknife a couple days ago at a restaurant, and I saw this sign up on the door, which I wanted to show you. It says, always give 100% of your work. 12% on Monday, 23% Tuesday, 40% Wednesday, 20% Thursday, and 5% on Friday. I thought that was funny. I support the store's e-commerce operations. I help them manage more effectively, offering my expertise on how they can improve. And with the scope of my work, I don't need to go very far to feel the brokenness. We can discover this by asking questions like, what brings unnecessary hardship in my work? What breaks down or hinders community? And these questions are in your handout. What degrades human dignity? What goes against God's norms and impedes human flourishing? In my context, I've identified the issue of staff turnover and retention as the area of brokenness. The instability that people are facing in their living situations has heightened since the pandemic, and this has translated to more of a transient workforce, putting added stress on store management to have a stable, trustworthy team to run their business. I believe at the heart of this issue is a diminished value of self and of community at the workplace. Managers are stressed out about giving proper attention to their staff needs. As a result, they're not taking adequate time to care to properly onboard and train our new hires. And they're not coaching them to their higher levels of potential. So it is in this discovery of this reality that not many managers have this same vision of renewal in mind. So that's sort of the brokenness that I've identified. I want to share a few other examples from a couple other of my classmates. The first one was from Peter. Peter works in upper-level management for the Central Bank of Indonesia, and he finds the brokenness in the growing wealth disparity in his country. Indonesia's economic disparity, driven in part by government spending and subsidies for the poor, having been reduced due to the pandemic. He also has identified financial illiteracy, leading people to become deceived about the changing monetary policy post-pandemic. And finally, financial digitization is growing fast and mostly benefits the rich. So that was the brokenness that Peter identified in his context. I want to tell you about my other friend, VP. He's a surgeon in India and mentors Christian healthcare professionals. For VP, he has identified the brokenness in Christian healthcare providers. This is a population that unfortunately is in decline, losing their Christian witness and seeking profits over the traditional self-giving care model. He believes that this population has a huge influence in the healthcare industry in India, specifically the nursing profession, with many Christians in that profession. So VP is committed to working with this group. The third example I want to bring is my friend Andre, based in China. Well, he's all over Asia. Dr. Stevens meets with him regularly. Among being a church planner of sorts, he works for a premium denim brand called Denham. And for Andre, he's looking at the brokenness first in the total market in China. He identified the brokenness here as everyone is trying to grow. And in his time working for Nike, he was involved in opening about 1,000 stores a year. That's an average of 3 per day. And so the mentality is to move fast as possible, which leads to having only transactional relationships with customers. And it's all about what we can sell. It's about domination, crushing the competition. The second view of brokenness he sees is in the luxury brand industry itself. The emphasis here is to push consumers to buy the most expensive product, the most exclusive product, to attach your identity to it so that you can get attention from people. The more attention you get by buying these things, the more desire you'll have for them. So these were just a few examples from some of my friends in understanding the brokenness in their industry. So we're going to invite you to do the same exercise. So now we'll go into step 2 here, which is imagining the change. What would it look like for this area of brokenness that we have identified to be renewed. Where can you see God at work in the midst of the brokenness? What can be done to bring healing, efficiency, order, or understanding to this problem? How do you propose to address this brokenness? What theological or doctrinal truths drive your vision, hope, or approach to change? What passages of Scripture inform a vision of glory and flourishing? So back to my context, I believe that everyone, no matter who they are, were made by God to flourish. Everyone has been wired to desire purposeful work, but sin has diminished the opportunity for people in my company to experience flourishing because of things like high stress work environments, sinful customers and colleagues causing grief, managers that don't take care of their staff, and other personal brokenness that people bring into the work with them. I can influence this area of brokenness to bring renewal by working with my managers and equipping them with a revamped onboarding process, focusing in on that brokenness that I identified and helping them to do this better. It looks like me casting a vision of care and calling to new hires in the onboarding process, upward mobility into their role with an emphasis on you belong. I want to try and help and restore the creation vision of human dignity in our workforce. For Peter in Indonesia, he imagines that government workers at the central bank will take more initiative to educate the poor about financial literacy and give people easier access to information about financial digitization. While presenting this part, he said so simply, he said, when we love the poor, we love Jesus. I love that. That even the simple motivation can spark a desire for change. For VP in India, the vision is to see young doctors and healthcare professionals grow in Christ-likeness and grow in their purpose of caring for the sick. He believes that that is what they are missing, caring for the sick. So VP will begin asking the question to himself and then to others, what needs to change in your personal story in light of God's story? What is the expected impact on the community as a result of that change? What do they want to see God working in their world? And then creating sort of a feedback loop to determine what needs to change in the personal stories, in the organizational stories, and aligning them to God's story. For Andre, he's catching a vision of how God created and designed business to function. He asks, if I'm selling jeans, are my jeans going to help people to flourish? He actually thinks they can. The word business in Chinese is literally translated to creating meaning. This is what business is in China is predicated upon. So for Andre's company, even if Nike or Denim doesn't see it, their business is about creating meaning. And so transactional relationships with customers become personal relationships. He imagines the salespeople in his stores seeing the person behind the wallet. He wants his salespeople to feel the needs of a life, to have a personal relationship, not just a transactional one. In China, Andre believes the most important currency is integrity. And while the industry is pushing to grow, Andre wants to actually slow down and grow deeper, grow in integrity. As he was presenting this, he said to our class, my boss would probably kill me if he heard me saying this, but I really think we need to slow down to build the right rhythms of growth in this business. We've seen what that step illustrated looks like, so we'll move finally to step 3, which is implementing change. And this is where the rubber meets the road. Identify key activities involved in realizing the change that you envision. Who would be involved in implementing the change? What steps need to be taken? What patterns of thought, habits, or structures need to be changed? What resources are available to help you? Are there any organizations addressing this area of brokenness whose work you can support or augment yourself? What resistance to change might you anticipate? So for myself, what I did was I hosted a virtual onboarding and training workshop for my managers. In it, I shared a clear, simple to use onboarding process managers can use to onboard new staff members. Maybe that doesn't sound super spiritual, but let me tell you that it actually does and has brought forth human flourishing. And I was able to offer personalized guidance to my managers who needed more help and ensured they understood the process. And finally, I implemented a system of accountability with the store management teams to ensure that the process was being followed. The desired outcome: better employee retention and engagement, increased levels of fulfillment in their roles, stronger commitment to our business, and customer service. That's flourishing. For Peter, his initiative is to advocate for the poor and communicate their condition to his colleagues. The workers at the central bank are not obliged to have direct communication with the poor, but he believes that those like him with a gospel heart must spread the good news and spread the news about the poor. He is also proposing a personal approach to educate the poor, as well as more funding to provide a larger budget for this initiative while involving as many people as possible. It's pretty amazing. For VP, he's been meeting with small groups of doctors for many years, but in an unstructured way. So what he's done in this project is bringing structure to his meetings, particularly focusing on helping and exhorting this group of doctors to discover their personal purpose and also conduct their own workplace transformation projects. Very cool. And finally, for Andre, for him, he's wanting to go back to this creation mandate that we talked about when it comes to making jeans. His vision is for Denham, his company, to become a kingdom organization and business without it even knowing. How can he change this? He believes that he has to change himself first. He prays every day and prays in a prayer group of other business leaders and shares his vision of renewal with them. For his company, he's restating the mission and the vision of the brand to his teams, and he's basing them on kingdom values. He will cast a vision for servant leadership in his workplace. He'll provide a value-based approach to the team making the product and treat his staff and his customers as individual lives loved by God, not as consumers.